Today we're going to answer some of our most pressing questions we've gotten about SUV camping.
Yeah, after 2.5 years of trips camping out of the back of our Toyota RAV4, we've gotten a couple of questions about what our setup looks like.
Yeah, so we're going to try our best to answer some of those today, but if we don't get to your question, leave it down in the comment so we can try to answer it next time.
And of course, hit that subscribe button because we want to take you on our adventures camping with us.
We're Deb and Phil from Creatives en Route, two budget travelers who love exploring our home country in our converted SUV camper and taking a few international trips along the way. Join us as we discover hidden gems, eat delicious local cuisine, and just have fun as we experience life in our SUV camper.
Okay, first things first, hitting with a big punch. Is it actually comfortable?
I think so. I mean, that's why we do it. Honestly, it's way more comfortable than sleeping on the ground in a tent.
I know we've said this before. If you've watched our past videos, the mattress makes a huge difference. So once we upgraded to the mattress that we have now, which is a Milliard trifold mattress, it's linked below, that really improved our sleep quality and just made it a great, comfortable night's sleep.
For sure. And one of the other nice things that I really like about it is that you can bring some of those comforts from home that are a little bit harder if you're like tent camping or especially if you're backpacking. So things like blankets and pillows, you can bring full-size ones from home and you have tons of space in the car for that.
We've also gotten some questions about whether it's comfortable to climb in and out of the back of the car. So we want to kind of address this. I think if you're somebody who really struggles to climb into the back of like a third row seat in an SUV, like in a bigger SUV, it's probably not going to be the setup for you. But for us, we've found it to be honestly pretty easy to navigate. So kind of depends on your comfort level, but we find it to be pretty comfortable. The next one is, why did you build the platform? So I think, honestly, the reason we built the platform instead of just sleeping in the back of the RAV was because we like to visit cities and stuff, and we wanted our belongings to be hidden and kind of secure so that we could easily feel like we could leave the car and not worry too much about it. It's not like we leave a ton of valuables in the car. It's mostly just like our clothing and food and stuff like that. But the way our setup works, we're able to conceal most of those items.
Yeah, and that's super handy. For me, it was on a very practical level. Our seats don't actually lay flat. And so if we wanted to be able to sleep not feeling like we're in a reclining chair or something, we really needed to build a platform to kind of overcome some of that elevation that the back seats have whenever they're placed down.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also just gives us a ton more storage.
And some people who car camp will have their mattress down on the ground and then everything that they're bringing with them is just thrown on top of the mattress. And then whenever they get to camp, they take it out of the car and all that kind of good stuff. For us, it's really handy because all of that stuff has a place to live underneath the bed. So one, it's secure, and two, our bed is always available. So whenever we roll into camp at midnight, we just crawl into the back and go straight to sleep. There's not any of that sort of setup or breakdown.
Yeah. All right. You ready for this next one?
This one is a hot take for sure.
What do you do about bathrooms?
That's a really big question and one that we've had to put a lot of thought into.
Yeah, honestly, for us, the complete transparent truth is that we always camp at campgrounds or somewhere that has a restroom readily accessible. And so we just honestly use a bathroom before we get into the car, like last thing. And then we will use the campground's facilities if we need to go otherwise.
Yeah. Having a car camp like this sort of setup that we have is kind of in this weird in-between sometimes between like backpacking and RV living. Because in an RV, obviously you have all the creature comforts, and usually that also comes with a bathroom, which is really nice. And then in backpacking, you're just like accepting the fact that when nature calls, nature is there to answer too.
There are animals out here. You want to know how I know? This big dung. All over here.
We've really opted for like campgrounds because it provides just enough of that creature comfort that you know that you have one available. And especially in the middle of the night, it's really not too bad walking across campground a lot of times.
Okay, I feel like we've already kind of hinted at this one on the last question, but how do you find a campsite? Typically, honestly, we stay at a ton of state parks or state recreation areas or national or county, city-owned parks that have campgrounds available. We also will stay at KOAs or other privately owned campgrounds like that. Those are what we look for first. I would say kind of in that order. State parks, county parks, things like that, then KOAs, and then private campgrounds.
Yeah, for sure. And we always book tent sites if that's available. I mean, we can park in larger sites if we need to, but usually tent sites are pretty accommodating for our particular setup.
There are likely to be fewer amenities available at state parks or county parks than there are at KOAs. So sometimes we book a KOA because we need to do laundry or something like that, and it really makes that price differential worth it. We also have the KOA membership, which saves us 10% on bookings each time and allows us to accrue points so that we can cash that in for free camping.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of people who like car camp who use BLM land, which is pretty prevalent out west especially. With that, it's totally off the grid, totally remote. Mm-hmm. So you're going to need to bring more of those amenities with you, or at least have a plan for those, like how you're going to get water, electricity, bathroom, things like that. But it is a really affordable way to camp. Mm-hmm. But we would just encourage you, if you do decide to do that, make sure you camp responsibly and use like leave no trace kind of principles whenever you camp that way.
Yeah. You can also stay at like travel centers, Cracker Barrels, Walmarts, things like that. But I would definitely recommend checking in with them first. That is not our most preferred way to camp, but it is an option, especially if you're like on the way to somewhere, something like that. All right, the next one is, what is your food situation? And this has definitely been something that we have kind of gone back and forth about a lot because we have camped for years. So back in college, we tent camped, we did backcountry camping trips with several of our friends and stuff. So we've brought food to cook over the open fire tons of times, and we really, really enjoy that. However, there are lots of places that won't allow you to bring in any firewood for environmental reasons. And so that hasn't always been super convenient for us. And so we've done a lot of picnic-y options for food.
Yeah, a lot of times you have to purchase firewood on site. You also can't collect it. And some places have burn bans. And so relying on having an open flame is not always something that you can do if you are really counting on cooking while you're traveling. So there are tons of other options as well that usually involve some sort of propane stove with like a fuel container, and that has made us a little bit uncomfortable about leaving that in a car that's just going to be out in the sun for a long time.
Yeah. We've traveled in some more extreme kinds of variations in temperature. And so that's just something that we haven't necessarily wanted to do. Even though people do it all the time, we just felt more comfortable bringing the cooler. I make a huge batch of granola. Phil is typically the chef on all things except for when it comes to granola. And that is his pride and joy. He loves granola.
It's such a guilty pleasure. And it really travels well, so it's always a good reason for Devin to make a big old batch of that. And we'll eat on that for a few days, which is really helpful.
And granola is not a guilty pleasure, but Phil only thinks it's a guilty pleasure because he feels guilty eating most of it and leaving not that much for me.
Snooze, you lose.
Dun, dun, dun.
This is the question everybody's been waiting for.
The big question. How much did your setup cost?
Yeah, we are cheap.
Okay, so I have the breakdown right here. Let me just go ahead and give one caveat, which is that we built the platform 2.5 years ago. And so prices on stuff have definitely changed, at least in the US since then. So these are the prices that reflect how much things are now. So we spent a little bit less than this when we first built this stuff.
Yeah.
So all in on the materials for the platform bed, we have a grand total of $92.92. That is considering that we already had like a drill, sandpaper, box cutter, measuring tape, those kinds of things. So it would be a little more if you didn't have those. And you may honestly have like some of the scrap wood and stuff lying around. Yeah. A lot of people do, which would save you a lot of money because lumber is definitely the bulk of that cost.
Yeah, for sure.
Then our other big expense has been our mattress, which is $170. So that definitely is a large investment. We did not make that investment in the beginning. We bought like a bunch of really crappy like mattress toppers.
Yeah, it was not the way to go. We were trying to be inexpensive with it, but what really happened was it was so uncomfortable. We needed to add an extra one and then add an extra one. And then by the end, it was super bulky. It was still uncomfortable. And we just generally did not like it at all. So we said, let's actually invest in something that is going to be much more comfortable and travel better.
Yeah. And there are some cheaper mattress options. We actually have some of those fleshed out on our website, which is linked below in the description. So you could take a look at that. You could save a little money there. We just really like the mattress option. So we spent $170 on that. And then total for all of the items that we have bought throughout time, we've definitely added to this. So this is a little bit more than like the basic necessities that you would need to start. All of those items cost $145.42. So that's going to be like our fans, our screens. We've definitely added a little bit more to our coffee setup and a net on the back. All of those are in our camping items video. The total for that is $145.42. So again, some of those prices have gone up a little bit since we bought them.
Yeah.
The grand total, drum roll please, for all of these things now would be $408.34.
Yeah. So still really, really affordable. I mean, some people who are backpacking are going to spend that much on a tent. And there are definitely some other options for like platform kind of things that can go into your vehicle. But most of them are actually going to be above even that total price just for a pre-built platform. So we really encourage you, if you haven't seen them yet, to go back and check out our build videos on how we built our platform, because you can totally do that too. And like Devin said, check out the top items that we use for car camping, because you're going to want to pick up some of those.
Okay. Here's the final question. Why did you choose SUV camping over tent camping? Or honestly, we could even say over a camper van too. So yeah, we'll give you the answer to both.
We definitely considered getting a camper also.
Yeah. So tackling tent camping first.
Point blank, it is way more comfortable to sleep on the platform bed in our SUV than it is to sleep in a tent.
Yeah. And we felt a little bit more comfortable when it comes to being in bear country, being in our vehicle rather than just sleeping in a tent. Again, people do it all the time. It's not a big deal at all, but we just liked having the security of having a hard shell kind of around us.
Yeah, it's easier for like animals and for weather. You just feel a little bit more like comfortable and secure if the wind is like really howling and things. It's a little bit simpler too.
Yeah.
You wouldn't really think about it like that because tents are so simple. I mean, they've been around forever. But whenever you get to a campsite and you're using a tent, you need to pull everything out of its storage, usually some sort of bag. It's got poles, it's got tarps, it's got rain flies, it's got all this stuff. And our setup really doesn't.
Yeah, we honestly throw on the mosquito nets, put up the shade, and then it's lights out. Okay, so why did we go with SUV camping over camper van? Because we watched a ton of videos in 2020 on camper vans, and really we were honestly kind of desperate to get a camper van. And the big reason we chose SUV camping over a camper van is money.
Yeah, camper vans, surprisingly enough, are very expensive.
They're expensive. I mean, you can find a cheaper cheaper van and convert it yourself and really save a ton of money doing that. We just don't necessarily have all of the skills yet that we would like to have in order to feel comfortable converting a car like that. It's definitely something we would love to learn and may pursue one day. I think we both still would really like to upgrade to a camper van at some point. But we also just wanted to try out the lifestyle and see if we liked it enough to save up and invest in a camper van. Turns out 2.5 years later, we do. But we are also like, we're still happy with this setup. So it's hard to stomach that huge upgrade in price.
But if you have more questions, leave them down in the comments and we will try to answer those next time.
Yeah, and subscribe to this video because you're not going to want to miss where we're headed next. We are so excited about what we're going to be bringing to the YouTube channel so soon and where our camper RAV is taking us on the road in just a few days.
Yeah, so follow along and we'll see you next time.
Bye.